I have to turn my mic on. I forget to do that almost every week. So. Very good. And we have, all right, clerk will close the roll. Thank you. We got 9 of us here, so good morning, everybody. We're going to get things started with a little bit of a change up from the printed agenda because we've had a request from Delegate Ware to be our leadoff batter this morning. So, Delegate Ware, if you would come and present us with the, do we have amendments or a substitute?
I suspected it as a substitute would be the form.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Ware, there is a substitute and it has been posted online under House Subcommittee's amendment and substitutes offered.
So, Delegate Ware?
Do you need to adopt or?
Yeah, I guess we do need to adopt the substitute, so thank you. It's still early. It takes me a minute the coffee
totally
doesn't kick in quite so early. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, the substitute is before us. Delegate Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and if this sounds like Groundhog Day, I guess that's because it is. I'm back in front of you with the same bill, except it's the same number, but there are several alterations to it. I'll try and go through it quickly and not trespass extensively on your time. I could take a fair amount with each of these provisions, but I'm going to try and, as much as possible, cut to the chase. It is a wide-ranging bill. It covers a number of the provisions that we have on voting and in terms of maintaining the integrity of voting. The first is that it would require all voters to show an acceptable photo identification. The second is that it would shorten what has been an extended period for absentee voting in person. It would repeal the permanent absentee voter list. It would require absentee ballots be received by the close of polls on Election Day. It would eliminate same-day registration. And finally, would require officers of election from each political party to process the absentee ballots and verify the cure process. As I said last time I was here, we require photo ID for so many things. Banking, I've got a list, and I won't bore you with a tedious list, but this has any number of places where we require photo ID. For the sacred franchise that we have in a democratic republic, this seems to me critical in protecting the integrity of it, ensuring that those who are eligible to do so can and do cast a ballot, but by the same token ensuring that those who are not eligible to do so do not cast a vote. When I originally brought this bill, and this is probably the largest single change since you saw it last, I had proposed a 7-day early voting. Both the chair of this committee and the speaker thought that was too short. So what we have done is to allow for a time period to include the 3 Saturdays leading up to Election Day for polls to be open, also allowing permissively registrars to stay open later in the evenings. I've understood that in Northern Virginia, with commuting times and the challenges there, that is something that is requested by several folks in places where travel is more challenging. I can go on and explain in more detail all of this, Mr. Chairman. I'd be glad to do that, but I know you have a full agenda, and that gives you, in short, what my intentions are in this measure, and be glad to extend the discussion as much as you would like.
Well, I think we've actually got it under control, Delegate Ware. We have heard these measures. This is something of an omnibus collection of several measures that we have heard and discussed extensively, so I don't imagine that there's going to be a lot of need for discussion on this, although I will entertain any questions from members of the committee.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question which it may be parliamentary or process. It seems that we've passed out of this particular subcommittee several different versions of either this legislation or other legislation, some with perhaps what Delegate Ware is saying, 7 days and Saturdays, some saying 10 days early voting, some saying 14 days early voting. Where and how is this going to get reconciled for one consistent measure that will go to the Senate?
Delegate Reed, I would say that before it goes to the Senate, it will not be. We would like to give them as many choices as we possibly can. But that this just gives us one more arrow in the quiver, so to speak. So, any other questions for the patron?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have another question.
Delegate Reed?
If I understand what you're saying right in this, is you're going to say early voting for 7 days and then Saturdays before and then local option for extending hours. Does that then create a patchwork of different hours and times across the Commonwealth? And is that pretty typical, or have we historically said this is when the polls are open so that everyone knows across the Commonwealth when voting will occur?
And I may have misstated this in describing the bill. My intention would be to include 3 weeks leading up to it, which would, of course, include the Saturdays, which are by far the busiest days. In general, it provides for business hours, 9 to 5, but it allows permissively places where the local registrar dealing with specific circumstances, and that could be anywhere across the Commonwealth where people would prefer that, they can add up to a couple of hours in the evening alternatively. So while it would allow differences, I don't know that I would describe it as a patchwork. I would say that we're recognizing distinct places in the Commonwealth.
Anyone else? The committee operates by motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Do we have testimony online? I mean, we do need to keep this really, really short because we've heard about all we need to hear on these issues, I think, from testimony. We know real well, I think, what we're going to do. If anybody's got anything new or has not had an opportunity to weigh on issues like this before, we'd like to hear from you. But all right, so I believe, looking at the names on the floor, if you'll raise your hand, if you tell me you got something brand new to say, we'll hear it. But we've got to do so. Well, on Facebook, you can turn cameras on. We'll see that. So, Hirsch, looks like you've.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. I'm Reverend Michael Hirsch, residing in Bowling Green, Virginia. I support HB 46 offered by Delegate Lee Ware because HB 46 will require voters to show acceptable ID. In my experience, I've served both as an officer of elections as well as participating provisional ballot certification. And in both instances, I've never had a voter object or suffer hardship by providing a photo identification at check-in. Thank you again. Please vote yes for HB 46. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. All right. Any others? And anyone in the audience that needs to weigh in on this issue? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mary Crutchfield, and I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Virginia.
Good morning.
I would like to speak to HB 46 on the requirement for photo ID. The League of Women Voters of Virginia opposes measures that would make it harder for people to vote. In this instance, those who do not have photo IDs, such as some older voters and voters who do not drive. For them, the time and travel involved in obtaining a photo ID, even a free one, hinders their exercise of the right to vote. We remind members that it is a felony to impersonate a voter, and it happens so rarely as to be insignificant. In Virginia's long history, photo IDs have been required for only 6 years, from 2014 until 2020. There is no evidence that photo IDs make any difference. We oppose HB 46. Please vote no on HB 46. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 46. I am Melody Clark, and I represent Heritage Action for America, a national grassroots organization with 2 million supporters nationwide, including thousands of Virginians. Heritage Action supports HB 46. It will strengthen the security and integrity of Virginia elections by requiring voters to provide a valid photo ID when voting. A recent national poll did show that 80% of people support requiring photo ID regardless of race or gender. In fact, among Asian, Black, Hispanic, and other minorities, photo ID was favored by 84%. In addition to this, we also support the measures which will increase the trust of Virginians in our electoral process by reducing the unnecessary extended period for absentee voting in person. It will clean up our absentee voter list by ensuring the list is up to date. It will require all ballots be treated equally and received by the close of polls on Election Day, ensuring there's enough time for election officials to verify a voter registration by eliminating same-day registration, and requiring officers of election from each political party to process the absentee ballots and verify the cure process. Thank you for your consideration. I humbly urge your support. I think there were another person on Zoom that had wanted to testify, but thank you.
There are, and I appreciate that very much, but we have heard a lot of testimony about all of these issues, and so we really have a lot of stuff on here, though I think we've gotten and I haven't heard anything new information that would do just a lot of support and some in opposition, and so I would just say again, the committee operates by motion. I have a motion to report. Do I have a second?
Motion to report the substitute.
The substitute, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would say to the committee, I think the substantial difference that we're seeing in the substitute is that we're extending the voting days to 21. And we're giving the option to the registrars that they may open the hours, to extend the hours if they want. But I think that was a lot of the information that we heard back. So I just wanted the rest of the committee to understand that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So we have a motion to report the substitute with a second. All in favor, please vote on the board. And House Bill 46 reports for the vote of 6-4. All right. Thank you, Delegate Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
All right, now we'll move back to our regular agenda to let you know how we're going to be handling things. You'll notice that things have been arranged in a block. We have, starting off, 3 House joint resolutions. We have HJ 9, HJ 28, and HJ 72. All of these are identical because these are the second reference of constitutional amendments before the body. Because of that, we're only going to take up one, and I think that the appropriateness because of the patrons and the time frame and the seniority of the patrons, that it would be appropriate for us to take up HJ 28, Delegate Herring's. And so I would start with entertaining a motion to lay on the table House Joint Resolution 9 and House Joint Resolution 72. Anyone would like to make the motion to table those two? And a second? All right. And if we will vote on the board for those two? And those are laid on the table, a vote of 6-4. All right, thank you. And now we have HJ 28, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is something that you all have seen before, so that I will be brief. This resolution provides 3 main things: a fundamental right to vote, to recognize it in our Constitution, revise the qualification for voters to be those who have, to include those who have been convicted of felony, and after they're incarcerated and released, they would be automatically eligible to vote. And it will update the existing prohibition on voting by persons found mentally incompetent to instead apply to persons who have been found to lack a capacity to understand the act of voting. So Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I ask that we pass this and then at least give it to the voters to decide whether to amend our Constitution. Thank you.
I would ask Delegate Herring, is there anything in this, again, just to reiterate, that would require any of the restitution or repayment of fines before it gets
Mr. Chair, no, it is not included.
that is included?
Right.
Very good. All right. I think we have several people online for this. We'll start with online testimony for those who can support this measure. We'll have, let's see, we have Ms. Caitlin Owens. Are you with us, Ms. Owens? Good morning.
Hi, good morning. So I'll go really quickly. The American Conservative Union supports this legislation or this resolution. I'm from Gibson County, Virginia. So shout out Delegate McGuire. We have a team at ACU that works on criminal justice reform bipartisanly, but in a conservative manner on public safety, human dignity, and fiscal responsibility. This legislation, granted, is bipartisan, and some of it may not agree with everyone, but this is something that we can get behind because it gives rights back to voters after they return back to society. We want to reintegrate people that have served their time, that may have kids in school, may be productive members of society, but can't have a voice. So this is a way that we can do that and bring it on the ballot in November. There's legislation and resolutions that, some may agree with, some may not agree with everything. But this is something that we can get behind and one start that we can push. And so that's why we as conservatives agree with it and we support this resolution.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Owens. And if I would, as we go forward, I want you to limit your comments, please, if you could, to 1 minute, if you would, because we've got a lot to get through this morning. So next we have Ms. Teresa Hepler. Ms. Hepler, are you with us this morning?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair and honorable members of the committee. I am Teresa Hepler. I'm a community advocate and attorney with the Legal Aid Justice Center, where I partner with community members to change policies that harm them, and we support this resolution. Through my work in marginalized communities, I have seen people genuinely rejoice over having their voting rights restored. People do care about the laws that impact their lives, and they do want to vote so that they can have a voice in those laws. The consequences of the criminal legal system fall disproportionately on marginalized communities, meaning that the loss of the right to vote also falls disproportionately on those communities. The government is thus losing the input of many communities, ones that already struggle to have a voice in government. Please report this resolution. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And next we have Ms. Christine DeRosa. Ms. Rosa.
Good morning, Chairman Head and delegates. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I've been the leader of the Arlington Falls Church chapter of Spread the Vote, an all-volunteer 501c3 organization, for over 4 years. During that time, we have helped dozens of returning citizens request the restoration of their civil and voting rights. Many of them had had their rights restored by the governor, but didn't know that. Some could have been voting for 5 or 6 years, but they didn't know they could. This is wrong. I urge you to support HJ 9, 28, and 72 and report them to the full P&E committee with the recommendation that I report these constitutional amendment bills to the full House of Delegates. Virginia voters should be the final arbiter in this decision in November. 6 delegates should not block these bills. The referendum bills should also be reported. With respect for your time, I've submitted most of my testimony in writing to your portal. On behalf of the thousands of Virginians who have served their time and returned to their communities, and those who will return in the future, I thank you and hope that you will do the right thing this morning. because Virginia is for lovers of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. We now have Ms. Gayleen Canoyton.
Good morning. My name is Gayleen Canoyton. I am with the Virginia NAACP, and we strongly support this bill for the expansion of the vote, and no one should be punished for not having punished to not to vote when you have 65% of Virginians that supports this bill as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, we have Ms. Sheba Williams. Ms. Williams, you with us?
Yes, good morning, Chairman, Head, and Committee. My name is Sheba Williams. First, if I can offer clarity on restitution, a person is not released from probation without paying restitution. I've heard a lot this session about protecting the rights of all Virginia residents, and I remember the chair speaking about forgiveness last year when this passed. 95% of disenfranchised individuals return to our society as our neighbors and loved ones. They pay taxes, own businesses, volunteer, donate blood, tithe, and belong in our communities. They should be allowed to decide who represents their children on school boards, city council, in this body, and beyond. I urge you all to vote yes on HB 130 and HJ 28 to allow voters to decide if their community members can exercise their constitutional right to vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. All right. Anyone, I think that's all we have online. Anyone in the audience to speak in favor of HJ 28?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. Jeff Caruso with the Virginia Catholic Conference in support of this legislation. We think it's just that when people have served their sentences, that they be restored the right to vote. We think it's important for reentry into society, and we think to the extent possible, people should be able to fully participate in the political process, and this bill would further that. Thank you.
I'm Mary Crutchfield with the League of Women Voters of Virginia. We urge the subcommittee to vote in favor of HJ 28. Passing this amendment will place the responsibility for this important decision where it should be, with Virginia voters during the 2022 elections. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Claire Guthrie-Gastignaglia here on behalf of Legal Reform for Intellectually and Developmentally Disabled. Wanted to underscore that this is an important disability rights measure. Hundreds of thousands of people, particularly autistic people across the country, lose their right to vote inadvertently when people set up guardianships for them. And that is true in Virginia under our current law. If you're adjudicated legally incompetent to manage your checkbook, you automatically lose your right to vote. And that shouldn't be the case. We've learned a lot about the reasons of why people have disabilities and the spectrum of disability. And this would change the language in the Constitution to say that the court has to say that you've been adjudicated not to be able to understand the act of voting before you can lose your right to vote. And so this is an important disability rights measure, and the Legal Reform for Intellectually and Developmentally Disabled urges you to vote yes.
Good morning, Chair and subcommittee members. My name is David Smith. I'm a formerly incarcerated individual and on the board of directors for Interfaith Action for Human Rights. IAHR represents people of faith who educate and advocate in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia for correction systems that avoid unnecessarily punitive practices and that instead focus on rehabilitation and successful reentry. As people of faith who believe in forgiveness, we ask you to vote yes, because research has shown that quickly restoring the right to vote to formerly incarcerated people leads to a higher reentry success, lowers recidivism, and therefore makes our community safer. Thank you.
Sir.
Good morning, Chairman Head, members of the committee. My name is Lee Williams. I'm representing RVA Interfaith Climate Justice League, and we support this bill.
Thank you for your brevity.
Hello, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Christiana Riederer. I'm representing Center for Common Ground, and we strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Sean Winetta speaking on behalf of the ACLU of Virginia, speaking in support of this resolution. And this is personal for me, as I recently went through the restoration process as a returning citizen, and I had to rely on the governor to restore my voting rights. I'm so very proud to be able to fulfill my civic responsibilities, and I'm also a constituent of Delegate Cherry, and he sort of walked me through this and mentored me through this process when he was still a candidate and now a delegate, and has been invaluable to me and believes in me and believes in restoration. Delegate Price, Delegate Herring have also mentored me through this process and my work with the ACLU, and helped me in my journey as a returning citizen. And as for payment of the fines and restitutions, Mr. Chair, and this other speaker noted, if you aren't paying your fines and restitution while you're on probation under supervision, you're returned to prison, so you won't be able to vote anyway. And I'm not asking anyone here to restore anybody's rights. We're simply asking you to empower your constituents, the very people that sent you here to Richmond to represent them, to determine if restoration should be in the hands of a partisan actor or in the hands of the people where I believe that it belongs. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Angela Inglet, and I'm here on behalf of Prison Fellowship, which is the nation's largest Christian ministry to prisoners, former prisoners, and their families. And we are here today in strong support of this resolution. It aligns with proportional punishment, reflects personal liberty, and encourages civic engagement and reintegration. And so for all of those reasons, we ask that you support this amendment and allow Virginia voters to decide this issue on the ballot in November. It's a good time to give this issue to the Virginians.
Us out.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Salim Kalfani. I represent the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and we support this resolution.
Thank you, sir. All right. Anyone here in opposition to the measure? All right. Seeing none. Delegate Herring, any final words?
No, I just, your mercy, but, you know, thank you. Thanks for the time.
We have a motion and second to report House Joint Resolution 28. So everyone can vote on the board. The resolution fails to report and vote of 4-5. All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Herring. Next, we have on the block the connected House bills that would be enabling, and in light of the failure to report those, it would, I think, be in order to either take a motion to pass by or to table House Bill 130, House Bill 416, House Bill 795, and House Bill 796, as those are all related to these resolutions. So either pass by or table, whichever would entertain a motion.
Move to pass by, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to pass by, and that's a voice
definitely.
vote? Oh, to PBI, all right. Do we have a second? Second, all right. To PBI those bills? We'll vote on the board. And the motion to pass by passes 6-4. All right, moving along now to block number 3. We will take up first Delegate Sickles' HJ 57, which is another constitutional amendment on second reference. And is the patron with us? He is not. Well, if we could ping him, then we can, in the absence of Delegate Sickles, we'll move on to Delegate Ranson. You have 2 bills before us, if you'd like to go ahead and.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, how about House Bill 1102? That was brought to me by the former Secretary of the Commonwealth, and I'm going to call this a state board cleanup for VDACs. And if you pull up that bill, it's again House Bill 1102. The goal of this bill is it's technical sort of housekeeping, and it's staggering appointments within VDACs to several boards so that they're not losing what I would call historical knowledge within the boards. And it's impacting the Aquaculture Advisory Board, the Marine Products Board, let's see, the Virginia Board of Asbestos, Lead, and Home Inspectors, and the Horse Industry Board, the Potato Board, the Virginia Commission for the Arts. And again, it's technical in nature, and what we're doing is just making sure that the folks that serve on those boards are staggering their appointments. We're not losing historical knowledge. Again, this was brought to me by the former Secretary of the Commonwealth and the former governor, and I would ask that we report the bill.
Okay. Any questions for the patron from the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Delegate Reed.
I'm down at the bottom, near the bottom, Delegate Ransone.
Mm-hmm.
There's, it appears, I'm looking at the highlighted version where it says that.
What line?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Let me get to that part. It's down on lines 96 and 97. It says 8 members of the board shall constitute a quorum. And that's struck through, which appears to indicate that there would not be a requirement for any type of quorum. Is that correct?
That's related to the Board for Asbestos, Lead, and Home Inspectors.
So it's just that one, but it wouldn't require quorum.
Mr. Chair, if I may, striking that language simply defaults to whatever the standard quorum would be. So majority plus.
That would be a majority of the board members.
Majority
present.
plus one. The bill changes the number of members on this board, and so the secretary suggested removing that language as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. We have.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
So I just had a quick question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Delegate Glass.
So just for clarity, I just was trying to understand with the Potato Board, that was the only one that changed to a General Assembly appointment? And was there, can we get some background as to why specifically the Potato Board was the only one that changed from a governor appointment to a General Assembly appointment? Or it says appointed by the GA?
Delegate Ranson, you have any?
That was a recommendation from VDAX.
Good.
Mr. Chair, again, just to clarify, the Potato Board does not move to appointment by the General Assembly. It, along with the other boards, are appointed by the governor and then confirmed by the General Assembly.
Very good. And Delegate Lefkowitz. Oh, that was for the last bill. I'm sorry. I apologize. The screen has been hidden here from me, so we're all set here. So any other question? And any other people speaking for or against this bill? We got one virtually here. All right, Dr. Wheeler. I believe you are with us this morning.
Sir, thank
Good morning.
you. Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to speak in favor of this bill, having served on a statewide board that turned over every 4 years. The members of the board come in with varying levels of knowledge, and there's, as Delegate Ransom points out, no historical perspective. I strongly submit staggered boards for almost any committee or board that this committee would appoint, or the General Assembly. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right. Committee operates by motion. I have a motion and second to report House Bill 1102. Everyone will please vote on the board. And the measure reports 10 to 0. All right, and Delegate Ransom, I think you have another.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, there is a substitute to House Bill 305 that narrows down this bill a lot. What the bill does now is really just focus on the State Board of Elections. I hope the substitute is available online.
We have a motion on the substitute. Second, all in favor? Aye, so the substitute's before us.
So there's nothing in this bill at all except the focus on the State Board of Elections. And all we're doing is changing the State Board of Elections to a 7-member board, which will be responsible, the board will be responsible for appointing the commissioner. The appointment schedule will remain 3 appointees in the second year of the governor's administration, and that will begin in 2023. And it would be 4 members of the governor's party, 3 of the minority party. The purpose of opening this to 2 more members, I would like to see people more staggered across the geography of the Commonwealth. I like a 7-member board. I think it's important that we have 7 members so that we can break a tie. After serving on redistricting, when you have an even number, it is extremely difficult to come to decisions. I think it's important that we have an odd number so that you are able to break a tie. But I guess what's important in this bill is that the commission appoints the commissioner. So this bill is a little bit different from what's in the Senate. I'm not going to assume that anything is going to get through with this idea, but I guess what's most important, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, is that this is pared down significantly. The only thing that this bill does now is focus on the State Board of Elections. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the patron from the committee? Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my question to the chairwoman would be on lines 142 to 144, where you're talking about the number that need to pick the commissioner, and it's 5 out of 7, which I think the intent there is that you would have to get at least 1 person to cross over from the other party to vote for the commissioner, which I think is a worthy goal and one that I would hope would happen, but I also am just cynical enough to think it won't. I've seen this happen across national agencies and then, as you mentioned before, with the commission. So I guess I'm wondering what happens if the other party gridlocks it out. Is there a backup mechanism so that if 3 Democrats or 3 Republicans just say, you know what, we're not voting for anybody, is there a secondary mechanism to ensure that we actually get a commissioner?
I mean, the way it's written is that, Sue, tell me your lines again. I've got a PDF for
It's on the LIS, it's 142 to 143. It's page 6.
Okay. So such. Mr. Chairman, I mean, I would say that this would, I mean, you've got to have 5 of the 7. I mean, you're looking for an affirmative vote, so.
So can I have a quick follow-up? I think this would be for council. Meg, if my cynical future prophecy happened and it did deadlock, what would actually happen? So would the old commissioner just stay in place? Would the governor pick an acting commissioner that would be in place until there was somebody appointed? Like, how would that functionally work?
Meg ponders.
I did a pondering sound you might not have heard. I think it's a really good question. I know in the Senate, a similar Senate bill, they added a provision to make it clear that if they couldn't agree on someone, that the director of operations, which was a position you all mandated a couple years ago, they would act in that capacity until someone was appointed. I think it's probably a good idea to address that just because it isn't clear, and you wouldn't want there to be then a fight about who could be an acting commissioner or who would be able to appoint the acting commissioner. I hope that answered that.
So, do I hear amendments being offered, or? I might suggest that we take this in conversation, because this will come up in full. If we can get to that with the patron, we could probably take care of that in full. when we get to that
Chairman,
point.
I would say, I mean, the purpose of me putting 7 in is because, you know, instead of an even number, is because we would get a majority vote. But I'm happy to discuss this with the delegate between now and full, if we can come up with something.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Valkenburg.
Yeah, I guess I would say that the easiest thing would be to strike it to 4 of 7, but of course that would be what we have now, right, which is 3 out of 5. So if you want to have that bipartisan buffer of you want to make sure that the other side has a say, I don't know off the top of my head what the answer would be, but I would think we would want a secondary mechanism to ensure that you don't have an unappointed, you don't have, that somebody gets appointed essentially.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to do damage.
I understand, but in just the interest of time and trying to get that all hammered out, I'll think we'd be better to discuss this between now and full, and if we can come up with something, that's fine. But any other people speaking to the bill? I think we've got 2 online. Ms. Robbins, are you with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allison Robbins, Director of Elections and General Registrar for the County of Wise, and I'm with the Voter Registrars Association. The Voter Registrars Association has long supported an independent State Board of Elections and independent Department of Elections. We support this concept, and we thank Delegate Ransone for working on this legislation. Thank you.
Dr. Wheeler, you with us this morning? Again.
Yes, sir. Thank you
Welcome
very
back.
much. Thank you, sir. Clarabelle Wheeler and I did serve on the State Board of Elections when it was a 3-member board. Fortunately, I think we had 3 responsible members, and we came to, we never loggerhead, and we never really had a problem with party representation because we were all interested in the process of elections. I can't speak for other people in that regard. I commend Delegate Ranson for bringing this bill. And I have laughed with other people in saying, you put people in a room, you lock the door, and you tell them they can't come out until they come to a decision. I'm not sure that legally you can do that with a board, but if you appoint responsible people who are interested in the process of elections, not driving a political agenda, then you will have people such as yourselves who hopefully will make wise decisions for the Commonwealth. By having a supermajority, you have removed the politics, and that was the intent of the JLARC Commission when they said there's too much political influence in the Department of Elections, and this is one way to remove that political influence, again, by also appointing responsible people who know something about elections and who take their jobs seriously. I support this bill, and I commend Delegate Ranson for bringing it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. All right. Any others speaking in favor? Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the administration supports putting the appointment of the Commissioner of Elections under the State Board to take out the political influence that you've heard so much about already. So appreciate the delegate for bringing the bill forward. We're happy to work with any of the concerns that we've heard from the committee today. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, committee operates by motion. We have a motion and second to report House Bill 305. Everyone please vote on the board. And this is the substitute. Yes, sorry about that. So we'll destroy the roll, try this again. And that was what I heard, was the motion to report the substitute and the second? Yes. Okay. So. And House Bill 305 reports the vote of 6-4. All right. Thank you, Delegate Ranson. And now we'll go back on our agenda to HJ 57. Delegate Sickles, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Early morning crew. Good to be here, committee. In In 2006, voters, by a vote of just 57%, approved a constitutional amendment preventing LGBTQ couples from accessing legal rights afforded to heterosexual couples through civil marriage. This was a depressing outcome for many of us, but I remember being somewhat surprised that the margin was not greater. Way back in 2006, I thought 57 was not too bad. Political plotters thought the amendment would help get out the right kind of vote in November, and it may have worked then. While it passed, the world continued to change, the moral arc of the universe, they say. More and more LGBTQ folks became known to their families and neighbors, and love for our families and friends eventually did the job. People became ever more comfortable in their skin, less hiding in plain sight. Fortunately for millions of families, the Supreme Court struck down state laws in 2015 that prevented adults to marry who they love after several federal court decisions already found the same constitutional deficiencies. Our Marshall-Newman Amendment was no longer enforceable, yet it sits in its utter ugliness in our Constitution. And I ask you to read our Constitution. This is in our Constitution, the stricken language on line 26. Political subdivisions shall not create or recognize a legal status for relationships of unmarried individuals that intends to approximate the design, qualities, significance, or effects of marriage, nor shall this Commonwealth or its political subdivisions create or recognize another union, partnership, or other legal status to which is assigned the rights, benefits, obligations, qualities, or effects of marriage. That is in our Constitution. Well, since that landmark decision in 2015, I'm unaware of any heterosexual couples who have been torn asunder by the trauma of seeing more happiness about the land. Many of our friends and neighbors and their children now have permanence and legal protections that come with marriage. It is simply fair. Few want to go back. Why would they? Would you be happier if others were less happy? Of course not. Can't we just strive to live, all of us, in a world where we're all equal under the law? At least 160,000 voters have come of age since 2006. Many, many thousands more have changed their minds about this subject. They would like a chance to join the 43% of us who voted no in 2006. They want a cleaned up Constitution. And if this second resolution fails today, it is because everyone in this room knows it would pass easily in November if it was put to the voters. If opponents thought this resolution would fail in November, it would be back on the ballot in a New York minute. You will probably hear someone say, oh, the people have spoken in 2006. They don't want to be bothered with this question again. Why don't we wait a little longer? Maybe inequality will make a comeback. Maybe the new Supreme Court will find that inequality is okay in America after all, that LGBTQ folks can just be happy with official second-class status. So I say to my friends on the other side, and you are my friends, you have a chance right now to let the people decide. Let's let the people decide whether they want this language in their Commonwealth's Constitution. I urge you to vote yes on this resolution. Let's get this resolution to the floor and let the House of Delegates decide whether or not to let the people decide. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you'll vote yes.
Thank you, Delegate Sickles. All right. Questions from the committee? All right. Seeing none, I do see online we have, looks like 3 people. Ms. Narissa Rahman, are you with us?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Morning. My name is Narissa Rahman, and I am the Executive Director of Equality Virginia. We are the Commonwealth's leading organization advocating for equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Virginians, and we are in support of HJ 57. We know that LGBTQ people want the same chance as everyone else to marry the person they love and take care of their families. And in 2015, like Delegate Sickles mentioned, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQ couples should have the same freedom to marry as other couples. And not only can LGBTQ couples now marry, but they can also access the rights and benefits that are related to marriage. At the end of the day, marriage is about loving, committed couples who want to make a lifelong promise to take care of and be responsible for each other in good times and bad. Marriage isn't about rights, it's about love, commitment, and responsibility. It's about the things we give to the person we love, to our families, and to the people's whose lives we share. Marriage is about the commitment we make to the one we love and the promise a couple makes in front of family and friends to take care of one another. These are the reasons that both gay couples and straight couples enter into marriage, and why the solemnity of the marriage vow is so, so important. Marriage equality is a law of the land. It's reflected in the Virginia Code, and it's time for the Virginia Constitution to reflect that reality. Thank you for your support of marriage equality.
Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Carol Shaw. Dr. Shaw.
Yes, thank you,
Morning.
Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Good morning. In 2014, I was one of the plaintiffs in the Bostic landmark case here in Virginia that led to marriage equality here in Virginia. We've had marriage equality now for 7.5 years. In those 7.5 years, what we've seen is more joy. Joy as families come together to celebrate love. Joy as children are finally able to enjoy the full legal protection of both of their parents. I'm a parent of a now 24-year-old. I can tell you that growing up in Virginia when there wasn't a marriage equality was scary for me. Everywhere I went, I carried with me a very thin, very dog-eared piece of paper that simply said I had legal full joint custody of my daughter with my wife. That paper was thin and ragged because I never left home without it for fear that someone would question the legal responsibility that I had as a parent to care for my daughter, to speak on her behalf, to approve her medical care, to make sure that she was well cared for. I helped her in school, I helped her with her homework, and yet my state didn't recognize the role that I played in my own daughter's life. This bill needs all of our support. It passed the General Assembly last year with bipartisan support because Democrats and Republicans alike now recognize the importance of having families care for each other. Without this bill, we continue to hearken to a past of discrimination and pain. Let's celebrate joy and say yes to this bill. I thank the delegate for proposing it. I thank the General Assembly for considering it. And I urge all of you on the committee to please vote yes on behalf of families. Nothing in the last 7.5 years has happened except for joy as families celebrated each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. And next we have Mr. Bruce Ryder.
Ryder.
Thank
you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman and committee. My husband and I deserve respect for our 36-year relationship in Virginia, our marriage and our family, just as much as any Virginia family. While our marriage is legal in far more than technicality, it remains undignified, threatening, and hurtful for the current constitutional language to remain in place. Virginia voters deserve the chance to vote for the honorable and the healing thing for our Commonwealth and for the thousands of their neighbors, family, and friends. This is not a moot point for us. This is about basic acceptance and respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all people. I urge your yes vote on HJ 57 to advance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone in the audience to speak in favor of the resolution?
I'm Mary Crutchfield, speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League of Women Voters of Virginia supports repealing the constitutional provision of defining marriage as only a union between a man and a woman. And we support all marriages being treated equally under the law, regardless of the sex or gender of the parties to the marriage. The League also hopes the General Assembly will consider that the civil status of marriage is already clearly distinguished from the religious institution of marriage, and that religious rights will be preserved without additional language. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience to speak in opposition to the resolution?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Jeff Caruso with the Virginia Catholic Conference, speaking in opposition to the resolution. We affirm the dignity of every person. We also believe marriage has an original design and purpose that predates any nation, religion, or law. This is reflected in our state constitution in a provision decided by voters in 2006. In light of current federal law, it is a dormant provision, but federal laws can change. A state law that is dormant now would become effective again if the federal law changes, but only if the state law remains on the books. The decision before you today, therefore, is significant and should be based on what you believe is the right policy. If you believe, as we do, that marriage is the union of one man and one woman, and that we should preserve this original design, please vote to continue reflecting that in our state constitution. Please oppose this resolution, and thank you for considering our views.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, subcommittee members, my name is Josh Hetzler, Legislative Counsel with the Family Foundation. We understand what Delegate Sickles is intending to do with this resolution, but it does actually more than simply repeal what some would consider an obsolete provision. And it's our position that it actually opens up Virginia to polygamy among other types of marriage. And let me just quickly give you 3 reasons why that's the case. Last year in this very committee, there were 3 bills brought to deal with this issue. One was a straight repeal bill. The other one was this version. And the other one was an identical version in every way with this one brought by Delegate Levine, except it had one difference. It said 2 parties to the marriage. It inserted the word 2. This committee decided among those 3 to go with the one that did not limit the number of parties to a marriage. That was very intentional. The second reason is that now, with this language stricken, there is now no definition in Virginia for marriage, either in the Constitution or the state code. So we're left with a provision about what we're to do with marriage without having any definition of what marriage is now. Which leads to my third point, that because the Virginia Constitution has supremacy over any Virginia statutes in conflict with it, the directive that the state, localities, and its agents shall issue marriage licenses, recognize marriages, and treat all marriages equally, when marriage is nowhere defined, it would actually override the statutes criminalizing certain kinds of marriage, including bigamous marriage, familial, close relative, and even child marriages. Now, I don't know where the members of this subcommittee stand on that issue as a policy issue, but what I do know is that we have not had a substantive discussion on those issues. And before we go putting something in our state constitution, better absolutely know what we're doing. And finally, I will just add this. We just got polling back from Mason-Dixon asking the question, would you support changing the state constitution to allow for polygamous marriages? And 88% of Virginians said no. So I ask you to oppose the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eddie Ayler, Virginia Assembly of Independent Baptists, I identify myself with the comments that were made and feel like we don't want to do an injustice that would take a long time to correct. Thank you.
All right. Delegate Sickles, I'll give you the final word.
Well, I tell you, when you're on the wrong side of public opinion, you can really make up some stories. I mean, that is incredible that they would say this. I mean, they're totally afraid that this would pass. And people understand what marriage is, what civil marriage is. So, you can sit around all day and make up excuses, red herrings, and straw men and vote on that basis. But I think we need to put this to the voters to decide. They're smart enough to know what this means. They can read the current Constitution, and they can read this and decide what they want. We don't need to do that for them, so I urge you to vote yes.
Thank you, and I apologize because we had, let's see, Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill. It's always hard to talk about this stuff. My entire life, all I ever wanted to be was married. In my entire life, I knew that wasn't a possibility. I don't think, unless you really can't understand what it's like to grow up in an environment where you knew you didn't mean anything to anyone. My parents are wonderful people in many ways, but they're deeply religious. And I barely survived to be here because of this. My partner and I have been together for 19 years. Even when we were able to get married, we didn't because we wanted to honor our parents, who were both Catholic on both sides. And my parents and her parents have finally said, "What the heck? Why aren't you married? It's legal now." This matters to people. And it's not hurting anybody. And it's not hurting God. And it's offensive to be lumped into polygamy and all kinds of other crazy stuff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion and a second to report House Joint Resolution 57. We will go to the board. H57 fails to report on a vote of 3-6. Make that 4-6. All right, thank you. Likewise, as we did with the previous block, we have the accompanying legislation was HB 605. I think we would probably entertain a motion to pass by.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to pass by indefinitely.
To PBI the bill. All right, and do we have a second? All right, so PBI HB 605. Everybody vote on the board. And HB 605 is passed by? No, I suppose I should vote. And that PBI vote is 6-4. All right. Thank you, members of the committee. That completes our agenda, and the committee will rise.